Have you ever heard a story, maybe from way back ancient texts, or even just, family stories where people are facing something just impossible, and then somehow the world itself seems to step in. A path just opens up, or they find safety against all the odds. Those kinds of stories, they really stick with you, don't they? Well, today we're taking a really close look at exactly that. Our source material for this deep dive is Sir James George Frazer's huge work, Folklore in the Old Testament.
Mm.
We're going to be focusing specifically on part 3, chapter 2. It's a really fascinating section called The Passage Through the Red Sea.
Right. And our mission really is to unpack what Frazer does in this chapter. He's not just retelling the story, which is, famous enough.
Hmm.
He explores how these incredible, almost unbelievable tales, the Red Sea crossing being the prime example, often have these really interesting parallels in history and folklore. And what's compelling is how looking at these parallels can actually tell us a lot about human perception, about belief, how we make sense of extraordinary things.
Yeah, it's much more than just one story, however iconic it is. It's about the patterns, isn't it? How we interpret these really unusual events, and how maybe natural things or clever plans or just powerful belief get woven into these stories that last for centuries. Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start with the core narrative that Frazer uses as the centerpiece, the biblical account. Israelites in Egypt suffering under Pharaoh. Then the plagues happen, terrible stuff, and finally Pharaoh breaks. He lets them leave Egypt, ending all those years of slavery. But it doesn't last long. Almost as soon as they're gone, Pharaoh regrets it. He gets angry, changes his mind completely.
Yeah, he musters his army, chariots, horsemen, everything. He's going to drag them back.
And he catches them right there on the shore of the Red Sea. Imagine it, they're trapped. Pharaoh's army coming up behind them, this huge sea in front.
It looks hopeless. I mean, a crowd of refugees, mostly unarmed against a trained army. It should be a massacre.
But then Moses steps up,
Yeah.
their leader.
Right. At God's command, the story goes, he stretches his hand out over the water, and the sea parts, just opens up. Frazer quotes the description. This broad highway appears, and the water stands up like walls of translucent blue crystal on either side. Incredible imagery.
And the Israelites just walk across on dry land.
Your eye shot, yes. Straight to the other side.
Okay, but the Egyptian?
Oh, they follow right in. Down that same sandy path between the walls of water, they're relentless. But once the Israelites are safe on the far shore and the Egyptians are still in the middle of the sea pass, Moses stretches out his hand again,
Yeah.
and the walls collapse. The source says the blue walls broke into sheets of curling foam, crashing together. Total chaos. The water just rushes back in, drowns the entire Egyptian army.
Yeah.
Men, horses, chariots, everything. Gone. Not one survivor. That's the moment of deliverance.
Wow. It's such a powerful, dramatic story. But he mentioned Frazer talks about sifting these stories, finding the fact inside the fiction.
Exactly. That's key to his whole approach. He talks about the kernel of fact and the husk of fiction. The kernel is the potential real event, maybe something natural or a difficult situation that actually happened. The husk is the miraculous layer, added later the divine intervention, the impossible physics.
So it's not about saying it didn't happen.
No, not necessarily denying it outright. Frazer actually says it would be rash to assume there's no kernel of fact. The fact that these stories persist so strongly often suggests something significant occurred.
It's more about how the story gets told and remembered, how it grows over time.
Precisely. How human minds process and retell extraordinary, maybe traumatic or triumphant experiences.
And Frazer points out, interestingly, that even within the Bible itself, there's maybe a hint of trying to explain it naturally.
That's right. He mentions Exodus chapter 14, verse 21.
Yeah.
One particular strand of the text, often called the Jehovistic, or J source. It actually attributes the parting of the sea to a strong east wind that blew all night, pushing the water back so the seabed became dry enough to cross.
So an early attempt at rationalization almost, offering a natural mechanism alongside the divine command.
You could see it that way. It's fascinating. It shows this tension between the miraculous and the natural has been there for a very long time. And Frazer argues there's less reason to doubt the possibility of such a crossing because we have other examples.
Right. And that leads directly to the Alexander the Great parallel, which is pretty amazing. Frazer mentions the historian Josephus.
Yes, Josephus, writing much later, in the 1st century AD, explicitly compares the Israelites' crossing to an event with Alexander the Great. He says that when God willed the Persian Empire to fall, the Pamphylian Sea actually drew back for Alexander, letting his army march right through its bed.
Wow. So Josephus saw it as a direct miracle for Alexander, too.
He did, and apparently he wasn't alone. Frazer notes other Greek historians felt the same way. Even the famous playwright Menander mentioned it, using language similar to how one might describe the Red Sea miracle. It clearly became a legendary event very quickly.
But didn't one of Alexander's own historians try to kind of downplay the miracle part? Arian?
Yes, Arrian tried to offer a more natural explanation. He suggested it was a sudden change of wind from south to north that exposed the beach.
Ah, like the east wind in Exodus.
Exactly. But here's the interesting bit. Even Arrian couldn't fully let go of the divine angle. He attributed the timely wind change itself to an act of providence. So still divinely guided, just indirectly.
So even the attempt to rationalize keeps a bit of the magic. But Frazer digs deeper, right? What actually happened with Alexander?
Well, Frazer pieces it together from what he calls the more sober and precise narratives. When Alexander was marching against Darius, he reached Phasaelis in Lycia. There were two ways forward. One was a long, difficult mountain path called the ladder, very steep.
Okay, and the other?
The other was the direct route along the coast, but the mountains came right down to the sea, leaving just a narrow beach. Now, if the wind was from the north or it was calm, the beach was passable. But if a south wind blew, the waves crashed right over it, making it deep underwater.
So risky. Depends on the weather.
Very risky. And Alexander arrived when the weather was stormy, south wind blowing, but he decided to split his forces. He sent some men over the mountain,
The ladder.
and he himself took a detachment along the shore road, despite the waves crashing against the cliffs sweeping over the beach.
He actually marched them through the water.
Yes. The account says they waded through the water up to their waists all day long. Just imagine that. Hours of wading waist-deep in stormy seawater. They finally reached the other side in the evening, exhausted and soaked.
That sounds incredibly difficult and dangerous, but not exactly supernatural.
Precisely. That grueling, perilous march is what got exaggerated over time into this miraculous Red Sea-like passage. Interestingly, Alexander himself in his letters apparently just mentioned the march along the beach without dwelling on the danger. And later historians even tried to pretty it up, saying a convenient wind change made it easy.
But Frazer thinks the legend wouldn't have stuck if it had been easy.
Right. He argues the very fact it became such a famous exploit suggests it must have been unusually hard and risky. So the story of wading waist-deep all day is likely closer to the truth, the kernel of fact.
So an incredibly tough, dangerous feat of endurance gets remembered as the sea miraculously opening up. That really provides a model for how these stories might develop.
It certainly does. It shows how rumor and, the desire for a good story can transform a challenging event into something divine.
Okay, so that's one pattern, natural difficulty amplified into miracle. But Frazer gives us another example, right? Scipio and New Carthage. This one seems more about strategy.
Yes, this is a fascinating case from the Second Punic War. Rome versus Carthage. Scipio the Elder wants to capture New Carthage, a key Carthaginian base in Spain. The city was well defended. Sea on two sides, and on the third side, a lagoon.
Oh, lagoon, okay.
And Scipio did his homework. He found out this lagoon was connected to the sea by a channel, and crucially, it had tides. It flowed in and out daily.
Ah, tides. That sounds important.
Very. He talked to local fishermen, and they told him that at low tide, ebb tide, the lagoon was actually fordable. You could walk across it. In some places, only waist deep, even knee deep in others.
Okay, so he has this key piece of natural information. What does he do with it?
This is where Scipio's genius comes in. He doesn't just plan a surprise attack. He announces publicly to his entire army that the sea god Neptune came to him in a dream.
Neptune, the god of the sea.
The very same. And Neptune, according to Scipio, promised to help the Romans in the attack in a way that everyone would be able to see.
That's bold. He's basically setting up an expectation of a miracle.
Exactly. And the soldiers, already fired up, totally bought into it. He also offered rewards for bravery, golden crowns. Morale was sky high.
So the attack begins.
The first assault on the landward side actually fails. It's pushed back. But this might have been part of the plan, or at least Scipio adapted brilliantly, because the retreat happens around noon, which Scipio knew from the fishermen was when the tide in the lagoon would start going out.
Perfect timing.
Perfect. So he orders a renewed assault on the land walls to keep the defenders busy. And at the same time, he sends 500 men waiting by the lagoon with ladders.
And the tide starts to ebb.
Yes, and apparently a strong north wind kicked up too, helping push the water out even faster through the channel. The water level drops rapidly. Scipio gives the signal. The 500 men, led by the fishermen guides, plunge into the lagoon and start wading across.
And the rest of the army sees this.
They see it, and they remember Scipio's dream, Neptune's promise. They are absolutely convinced the sea god himself is making a path for them, leading the charge.
Wow. Talk about motivation.
Incredible motivation. They attack the main gates with renewed fury. Meanwhile, the 500 men get across the lagoon, find the walls on that side practically undefended because everyone's fighting off the main assault.
They just climb up.
Climb up, get inside, run to the main gates, and open them from within. The city falls very quickly after that.
That's brilliant. Using natural knowledge, timing, and this layer of religious belief he manufactured.
And what's really interesting, Frazer points out, citing the historian Polybius, is that Scipio himself seems to have genuinely had this mystical streak. Polybius suggests Scipio was secretly more than half convinced that he really was getting divine help. He used to spend time alone in the temple of Jupiter, apparently communing with the god.
So maybe he wasn't just manipulating his soldiers, maybe he partly believed it himself.
It seems possible. He definitely cultivated this image. His statue was kept in Jupiter's temple and brought out for processions long after he died. He clearly made people believe he had a special connection.
So the parallel Frazer draws with Moses here is profound.
Extremely. Frazer explicitly says, such a union of soldiership and statesmanship with religious exaltation is eminently fitted to attract the reverence of the multitude. It was one of the secrets of the elder Scipio's power, and we can hardly doubt that it contributed largely to the belief of the Israelites in the divine legation of Moses.
It's that combination, leadership, maybe some genuine belief or mysticism, and the ability to frame events, especially ones envisioning natural phenomena as divine acts.
Exactly. It provides another powerful model for how these miracle narratives can arise and take hold.
Okay, so we have Alexander's tough march becoming a miracle, Scipio's strategic use of tides becoming Neptune's intervention. But Frazer doesn't stop there, does he? He brings in examples from completely different cultures.
No, he broadens the lens significantly. He shows this isn't just a Greco-Roman or Judeo-Christian phenomenon. He gives examples from African tribal folklore.
Like the Wafipas near Lake Tanganyika.
Yes. They tell a story about one of their kings. He's fleeing enemies, trapped by the lake. Very similar setup. But instead of just stretching out a hand, he performs a ritual, sacrifices a sheep, dips his staff in the blood, strikes the water, and the lake opens a path for him to escape.
So a ritual act triggers the miracle in that version.
Right. And then there's another story from the Bayas in the French Congo region. They needed messengers to travel and learn ironworking secrets. Their canoe capsizes on the Kade River.
Oh, dear.
So they use magic spells. And the river divides. One part actually flows backwards to its source, letting them walk across the riverbed completely dry.
Magic as the mechanism there. It's fascinating how the core idea, impassable water parting for escape or passage, appears in such different contexts with different explanations.
It really is. And that's Frazer's point, I think. Whether it's framed as divine intervention because of a leader's faith, like Moses, or seen as a reward for a hero like Alexander, or achieved through a general's cunning like Scipio, or through ritual or magic like in the African stories. The underlying human experience seems to be encountering an overwhelming obstacle, often water, and finding an unexpected, extraordinary way through, and our minds naturally reach for explanations beyond the ordinary.
It really ties it all together. So we've gone from the Red Sea story, looked at Alexander's march, Scipio's brilliant tactics, and even these tribal folktales. What's the big takeaway from Frazer's perspective?
Well, what's really striking is how all these narratives, despite their differences, tap into that fundamental human desire to find meaning, maybe even divine purpose, in moments of extreme danger or unexpected good fortune. It shows how we process events that seem to defy explanation. We build stories around them, stories that often involve forces greater than ourselves, and this really makes you think. Frazer's work strongly suggests that what often gets recorded as a pure miracle might be this potent mix. You have a real event, maybe a natural phenomenon like a wind or tide, maybe a feat of human ingenuity or endurance. Then you add the powerful element of human belief, interpretation, and storytelling. And over time, these elements weave together into these incredibly durable narratives that shape how cultures understand their past and their relationship with the divine or the extraordinary. They become more than just history. They become foundational myths shaping identity. Absolutely. They become the lenses through which people see the world.
So it leaves us with a really interesting question, doesn't it? The next time you encounter one of these stories, an impossible escape, a miraculous victory, what kinds of elements will you be listening for now? How might you think about separating that possible kernel effect from the husk of fiction that grows around it over time?